The title of this podcast is What is the lowest part of your being? It's quite simple for me. The part of my being that is not okay. If I give in to that part of my being, I will do everything within my mind's power capacity and my heart's influence to try to get things to be different and to change other people, other situations, anything that I'm bothered with that should be a different way. That's what I'll be doing. I will be a slave to that. And I will have no peace. There will just be consistent and constant suffering. And you can take the most trivial example. Let's take, for example, traffic. I mean, we live here in Arizona, and right now, close to where I live, there's a lot of freeway construction going on. I could be completely bothered by that. And because the lowest part of my being can't handle that, the folks, those hardworking folks who are out there making improvements on the freeway, I can not have gratitude for them. Instead, I could be looking at how it is inconveniencing me or delaying me from getting from one destination to the next. I can certainly do that, but that would be giving in to the lowest part of me. And I'm choosing not to do that anymore in my life. The same thing happens in the work environment. There are leaders that are going to come and go, and when they're there, they may have a vision or a way of doing things that doesn't feel good. That feels like it is robbing you of fulfillment at work. And perhaps on some level, it is challenging to work with certain people. And if that's the case, then your job is in the face of that to show up and do your very best to make a contribution, to serve as nobly as you possibly can. Or you can do what I used to do as Keith 1.0. I would talk about it, complain about it to others, look for agreement from others about how poor the leader was in leading us, and I would just be bothered and upset all the time. And that's one way of doing it. And if you do it that way, what you're doing is you're giving in to the lowest part of yourself, the part of yourself that is not okay with the way that things are, the reality of the situation. And that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to say, in the reality of this leader showing up the way they can, how can I work on myself in such a way that I can still bring my best in the face of that? That I can be unbothered by how they show up. And I refuse to let the lowest part of me who can't handle it be dictate it being bothered, dictate what my experience in the workplace is going to be. And then if you do that, then any leader that shows up, you're able to handle it. The ones that show up that have great leadership qualities, then you're like, oh my God, this is fantastic. This is great. And the ones that show up and their leadership is wanting, you're like, oh my God, this is great. I get to work on myself. You get to do that. And we are, this is an election year. And so there are so many political ads going on. And, if you support this candidate, there are things that side are saying and doing, and it goes back and forth. And if you get drawn into that and you find yourself being on one side or the other, then you can see an enemy in somebody who has an opposing view. And who sees the other party as an enemy? The lowest part of you does. So why would you consider living your life based on what it dictates? The smart person wouldn't. The smart person, the wise person would say, like, oh, I noticed my mind has some comments on that. I noticed that we have some, it has some strong feelings about this person's values versus my values or whatever those things are. And in the face of that, I'll acknowledge that there are some differences in what we see is the way forth for the country, but I will not allow that to get in the way of being closely connected with a family member. with colleagues at work and with a potential neighbor and a friend. I'm not going to do it. That's what the wise person does in that situation. They stop being subservient to the lowest part of their being. And just to define it one more time, what's the lowest part of your being? The part of your being that is not okay. Don't give in to that. Just like a child that will throw a tantrum, so will it. Don't give in to it. You will never win. And once you do, you continue to have to give into it and give into it and give into it. It shows up in so many ways. Insecurity in relationships, controlling in relationships, both personal and professional. The way that you view people that you barely know, or even people you think you know, it will show up in all aspects of your life if you don't work on. I'm going to be around people. That's going to happen. That's a part of living in an advanced society. I need to be able to learn how to be okay around people that are different than me. The same thing applies to situations. Like, not every situation is going to be like the fantasy vacation. In fact, hardly any are going to be like that. So how do I learn how to be okay with that 99.9% of living? How do I do that? The way to do that is treat every single moment as precious, as valuable, and as an opportunity to let go of the lowest part of yourself. I keep coming back to something that Michael Singer said, the author of Untethered Soul. He said that anytime the world shows up in the form of situations and people, and I'm unable to handle it, I want to welcome that situation, that person, and I want to hold that out to the world, the lower part of me, until the world takes a piece of it, until there's nothing left. And the only thing that's left of me is my highest self, not the lowest part of my being. I work really hard to remind myself of that in every situation in the workplace. When I feel like an idea that I have is not being considered, when I receive feedback that I don't think is, that my mind says is not being supportive, when I'm asked to do something that my mind says is beneath me, when my heart and mind get on this tune or start to try to sing this tune that I'm not valued, I don't have any autonomy, I don't have, when all that stuff happens, and including in relationships, something very similar in which I'm not okay, I remind myself it's like, good, you notice that you're not okay. And the noticing is key. When you notice, that's your way out because you recognize that it's not you. And then I'm able to step back and say, that path leads down to suffering. If I stay attached to that line of thinking, if I say that identify with what my heart is feeling, but that's not me. So I'm gonna take a step back. I'm gonna exhale, and I'm gonna remember, I'm just here to serve as best as I can. And I'm gonna let go of that part of me so I can experience the joy of serving, the joy of giving. And I just don't want to miss out on this present moment. And I hope you consider that and do the same thing. You know, just ask yourself, what is the lowest part of my being? And again, that part of your being is a part that's not okay. So as we go through this election year and you get riled up, just notice that's the lowest part of your being. When you want to make the other side an enemy, notice that's the lowest part of your being. When things aren't happening at work as fast as you would like them to happen, or the outcome isn't what, and you can't handle it, it's the lowest part of your being. You want to look at all of that and say, I want to learn how to handle this. I want to learn how to handle this. I want to see that again. You know, Julie, my friend Julie, and I, she's heard me say this many times when we're on the pickleball court. I get beat by a ball from the opposition more than once. I say to myself, show me that again. I want to see that again and again and again so I can get it. And now Julie's starting to say it. We were drilling this week, and I hit a ball to her a few times and she couldn't handle it. And she says, I want to see that again. And I said, you got it. You're going to see it again. But what I know is she's going to learn how to handle that ball. And that's what you want. It makes you a better player, it makes you better in life. It makes you a better parent, partner, and human being. So work on this. Work on letting go of the lowest part of your being.